Over the weekend, I saw this documentary on Disney Plus, and normally when you have something on Disney, you're kind of very cautious about the kind of content that is being put out. But this was about a group that I grew up enjoying listening to, and it was really one of my mother's favorite groups when she was a teenager, and that is none other than the Beach Boys. Now, I remember listening to the Beach Boys growing up, and I'm going to share that story later on. But I'm going to talk about this documentary that was over the weekend. And let me just play with you the brief intro to the documentary.
Basically, our forte is harmonics, because there's a certain family blend. Three brothers, Brian, Dennis, and Carl, a cousin, Mike Love, and our good friend El Jardine. That's family to me.
So that was the intro to the documentary. And what I liked about this was that they were talking about how they got together and who replaced who and the highs and lows of them as a group. It starts off with the three boys, Brian, Dennis, and Carl, moving into Inglewood, California, and they would talk about how they started playing music. They would be doing a lot of things at their cousin Mike Love's house, especially during the holidays, and their influence for their harmonics was by the group called the Four Freshmen, and that's basically what Brian Wilson was wanting to do with his brothers and his cousin Mike. And Brian was inspired to write his own musical arrangement and his lyrics. And then came Al Jardine, who is a good friend of the family, and he too was musically talented. So that was basically the setup of how they all came together, the original Beach Boys. And as you watch this documentary, you just see the highs and lows of them going through how their songs became a hit, how some of their songs were a struggle, and it just was well done. And if you've grown up being a fan of the Beach Boys, this really is for you. Now, as far as their style of music, when they first started, now they talked about the harmonies, but here is their influences of their style of rock and roll. And you just look at all the groups that played this style of rock and roll on the guitar, and they really were inspired by that a lot. So you have their harmonic influences, and then you have their style of rock influences. Now, let's check out their very first song that they made. But before that, were they always called the Beach Boys from the very get-go?
We were calling ourselves the Pendletones.
Those were our shirts that all the surfers were wearing at the time.
And then somebody from the label said the song is called Surfin'. What about the Beach Boys?
None of us really liked it.
And we got stuck with it.
We put out Surfin' on a small independent label.
A month later, we heard it on the radio.
There was a radio station that premiered like 4 songs a week. And the one that got the most call-ins won the contest. Well, we had a big family.
So do you think they would have had a legacy if they were called themselves the Pendletones?
I don't think so.
And their very first song that they put out that was on the radio was called Surfin'. And so with the combination of their first song ever made and the inspiration of how they got their name, the Beach Boys, you get the birth of an iconic group.
Beach Boys is dope. I love Beach Boys.
And this really was a fascinating documentary. I really liked it. It held nothing back. It talked about how their father Murray got them a record deal, but it also talked about how he basically screwed them over by selling the rights of their songs. And it also talked about the troubles that each member went through, especially Brian Wilson, why he did not want to tour with the group, why he would have rather stayed home to record music and sound it so that when they get done with their tours, basically all they had to do is go to their studios and record their next album. Now, the one thing that they did not elaborate on, and I can see why, is they didn't really elaborate on the passing of Brian's two younger brothers, Dennis Wilson and Carl Wilson. But what was nice about this, how they ended it, was how the surviving members of the Beach Boys all gathered together and reminisced, and the film showed in loving memory of Dennis and Carl. So let me just share that with you.
A lot of people have a favorite in a group, but a group is a group. The Beach Boys are a family story, not without its ups and downs, but the positivity far outweighs the negativity.
So, despite their ups and downs, they are still a group, they're still the Beach Boys, and their music will continue to live on.
Beach Boys are dope! I love Beach Boys.
Now, I really grew up listening to the Beach Boys because they were one of my mother's favorite groups of all time. And I asked her the other day if she had any albums, and I tried to look for them, but I couldn't find any. But she did tell me about some of the albums off the top of her head, and some of them I do remember, but I can only remember two albums that I did remember her having. One of those albums was Surfer Girl, and they had a lot of good songs on there. You had Little Deuce Coupe, you had Surfer Girl, In My Room. I just remember those songs that were constantly played. The other album I remember as a kid was Endless Summer, and this basically was their greatest hits. And their greatest hits, I very well remember listening to a lot of these songs, and so this was just my childhood memories listening to the Beach Boys. And this is the CD that I have. I've had this for a long time. As you can see, there's a lot of cracks in the cover, and this was the collection of all the songs that were on this CD. You'd have Surfin' Safari, you got 409, Surfin' USA, Be True to Your School, Surfer Girl, Fun Fun Fun, I Get Around, Help Me Rhonda, California Girls, Barbara Ann, Good Vibrations, Heroes and Villains, Sloop John B, God Only Knows, just all their top hits that they made. And if you were to ask me what my all-time favorite song from the Beach Boys, you can't do that. I could not give you an answer, because each time I'm listening to a song, I'm like, oh yeah, that's my favorite song. Oh wait, no, that's my favorite song. So you can't really choose a favorite song. But one of the stories that I have to tell you that my mom told me was when I was a young child. The song Barbara Ann would come out, and you get Barbara Ann, and I would go to these places and to our church gatherings, and I'd walk into our facility, and I'd be going ba 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 Barbara Ann, and the grown adults were just laughing. So I would have to say that Barbara Ann was probably there, but at the same time, it's like, okay, I love Help Me Rhonda because one of my mom's good friends had a daughter named Rhonda, and so every time they'd come for a visit, she'd always shell out, "Help me, Rhonda! Help me, Rhonda!" She was embarrassed, but as she grew older, she appreciated it even more. But like I said, the Beach Boys were just, they're one of those groups that you grew up. And so, if I was to ask you what your favorite Beach Boys song was, well, I'm sure you'd have a difficult time as well. But let's just have a fun conversation about this. What are your favorite memories of the Beach Boys? Are there any songs that touch your heart the most? Please let me know. So thank you so much for watching this video. Please give this video a thumbs up and to share this with other Beach Boy fans that you know. So let's have a good conversation about this, and I'll see you in the next one.